Migration Conversations is a podcast that invites persons to share their migration stories. Hosted by myself, Professor Jamie Liu, each episode is an in-depth conversation with people who have experienced the Canadian immigration system or other migration regimes up close. We talk to migrants, immigrants, lawyers, policymakers, advocates, and experts. We hope that these conversations shed light on the challenges migrants face through their own voices. On today's episode, we speak with Roisah, a previously stateless person in Malaysia. I first met Roisah in January 2018 when she was on the precipice of becoming an adult in Malaysian law. She was racing towards trying to advocate and ensure her citizenship application would be granted before she became ineligible as a result of her age. As you listen to this podcast and this conversation, ask yourself what kinds of difficulties and experiences she endured while waiting for her application to be processed, and what kinds of things she had to perform or do in order to eventually obtain her citizenship. Today, we're going to be talking to a young woman named Roisah. She was a previously stateless person in Malaysia, but has now been conferred citizenship. So first of all, I want to say congratulations, Roisah. When I first met you, you were stateless, and a year later, when I received the news that you obtained your citizenship, I couldn't be happier for you. So I'm so glad that there's a happy ending to your story.
Thank you so much.
So Roisah, you and I met in Malaysia in January 2018. And at the time, you did not have citizenship to any country whatsoever, and you were stateless. Can you tell me why you were stateless when we first met? And, I understand that you learned you were stateless at the age of 12. And can you maybe give us a sense of how you discovered you were stateless?
So basically, when here in Malaysia, when you turn into 12 years old, you had a whole, like a birth certificate, and then after that, when you reach 12 years old, on your birthday, you are automatically applicable to register for identity card, which is your it's like a car license. So basically from there, me and my adoptive parent, we went to the registration office, and then from there we just found out that that I had no basically legal documentation for my state, like for my citizenship. So basically I cannot apply for the IC, the identity card. So we had to go for a long process, which is here we call it like pendaftaran lewat kelahiran, which is late birth certification. So we had to go through that process. So from there, I just found out that I was stateless. So basically, like it's a new journey, starting from there.
Yeah, so from what I understand is that what you just said is that you didn't know that your birth certificate was not a legal document, that you were adopted when you were younger. And at the age of 12, it's very common for people to go to the registrar's office to get an identification card from the Malaysian government. At the age of 12, you become eligible for this IC, as they call it. And when you went to apply, you were told your birth certificate was not a legal document and you were not a citizen. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
How
right.
did you, were you there when they told you that you were not a citizen? They told you face to face at the government office?
Basically not directly words toward me, but I kind of get the, like what they are saying. So basically, we just like, oh no, you cannot register for this. You have to do something else. And then we just went for that.
How did you feel when you couldn't get your IC or when you realized that you
Mhm.
possibly were not a citizen?
At first, I was really young, and I was like, like other kids who really want to have their own cards. Like my friend had it first, so I was like really hopeful. I was like very excited. So when I was first told that, I was like, what's happening? So kind of like shocked and like a little bit sad, I think, that time.
Yeah, it must have been very upsetting. I think it's very similar in
Yeah.
Canada when children, I think in some provinces you can get a learner's license to drive a car at 16. And I remember when I was doing that, it's very exciting. You want to get it because some of your friends have it. But then to be told it by a government official, wait a second, you don't qualify, you can't get
Yeah.
it, that can be disappointing.
Mhm.
So I wanted to ask, after that encounter at the government office, you were told to go somewhere else, which was to obtain a new birth certificate. That's correct?
Yeah, we kind of like first we want to register for IC, right? Then we have to change our course. Like we had to do a late certificate, so it was like totally 360 degrees changes. So I was like, okay, what is this? So kind of like that thing.
Yeah. So um, after that, you were told to go get a new birth certificate. And did your adoptive parents help you get a new birth certificate?
At first we didn't really way. We have to apply for this form, which is for the late birth certification. So from there, my adoptive parent, she fill up all the form that the officer told us to fill up. So from there, we just like my adoptive parent handle it all by herself.
Yeah, so it sounded like a lot of paperwork you had to complete to
Mm-hmm.
get, and it sounded like you had to apply for a late application for
Mm-hmm.
a birth certificate. And were you granted a birth certificate after all of that?
I actually get that certificate after 3 years, so it's very long journey to go. Yeah, after 3 years, then I first got my birth certificate, and my adoptive um like what official letters, something like that.
But the birth certificate that you got after a couple years of waiting stated that you
Mm-hmm.
were not a citizen. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So even after filling out all of that paperwork and all of that application
Mm-hmm.
processing time, you did get your birth certificate, but then it stated that you were not a citizen, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very true.
And how did you feel when you obtained your birth certificate then?
Basically, I don't really think it's a like a legal documentation. It's basically like almost to nothing, because at the end of the day you cannot use that birth certificate for like, unlike citizenship, the treatment, the specialties from that, right? So basically, I was actually really happy at that time. It was like you see you it's like you seeing a light over the darkness. So yeah.
So when you obtained your birth certificate, you were hopeful that this would help you obtain citizenship later. Is that correct?
Yeah. From there, when I first got my birth certificate, and also I have completed my adoptive official letter with my adoptive parent, I went to apply for citizenship at the Home Ministry. So from there, it's like a totally different journey from when I want to get my first birth certificate. It's a different process to go, which is citizenship is much longer, which is I wait for 5 years.
Wow. Okay, so let me get this straight. You were told when you were applying for your identification card at the age of 12 that your birth certificate was not a legal document and that you weren't a citizen. So then you applied for a new birth certificate that took about 2 years to get. When you got your new birth certificate, it said you were not a citizen. And then you took that birth certificate and used it to apply for citizenship through another government office. And that application took 5 years to process. Is that correct?
Yes. It took whole 5 years to wait for the result, which is waiting for the either the ship is was denied or not. So basically, during that 5 years, we are contacting directly with the Home Ministry, which is responsible for citizenship application. So we are waiting from their side. So basically, I wait for 5 years for that.
And how did you feel during that 5 years? Were you, what were you experiencing? Were you able to, did you experience any challenges during that 5 years?
Oh, a lot of things. Basically, you almost had nothing. You know, like legal documentation, like where you want to go, what you want to do. You basically have to have legal documentation, right? So basically, my 5 years is I was like in high school. So basically, I can really access to healthcare, public healthcare, which is like private healthcare is really expensive. So and then for education, I basically my school really helped me a lot in terms of what kind of treatment, like other citizenship get. I do get that, but in terms of like the offer to go better schools, like any activities that like are required to do documentation, I was limited to that. I was kind of like very insecure too. I was like very really worried about that. That thing, I was like, no one know except for my teachers. So I was like a little bit reserved at school.
Yeah, so from what I understand, you weren't able to access healthcare, that you were lucky. Normally, stateless children don't get to go to school, but your teachers helped you out and were able to
Yeah.
help you enroll in school. But that you were also afraid that of how people would treat you, and so you only told your teachers, and only your parents knew you were stateless. Is that correct? And that anything that required documentation you weren't able to do, so any activities or any official programming you could not participate in because you didn't have identification.
Yes.
That's really difficult to deal with at a young age, and I'm sorry you had to deal with that. Yeah, no, and I understand that you met a paralegal, Satya, by the name of Satya, through someone at your school, who also helped you with your applications. Can you tell me, why do you think it is important for people to get legal assistance to help them with the process of obtaining citizenship, and especially in your case?
Okay, as for me and my adoptive parent, which is at that time my adoptive parent was like 40 to 50 something, 50 years old. She was really old. Like this kind of process is like really long and complicated in terms of the form, what form you need to required to fill up, and to what department you want. You have to go to get the right form to apply for the citizenship and whatsoever. So in terms of that, we kind of like really confused at that, because that was a first time for my adoptive parent as well. So she was really need help in that kind of understanding to do the process well. So basically, with Mr. Satya, he helped us a lot in terms of what suitable form to fill up, and which department we have to go, which places we, and then what who we need to meet up, kind of like that thing. So it's really easier with Mr. Satya to help us, because he has a lot of experience. He has been doing this for many years with other people that has similar cases with me. So yeah, so far what we have done, and we have been, through all this time till today, is from him.
No, I understand from you and Satya that there's a lot of work involved in putting a citizenship application together. Not only do you have to fill out the forms, you have to get the right form, as you said. And sometimes the government officials don't tell you which forms that you need, or give
Yeah.
you the forms. They don't tell you which offices to go to submit the forms. And also, I understand he helped you obtain different kinds of documentary evidence too, right, to accompany your application. So he helped you get a lot of the evidence you needed to prove you were a citizen. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about why is it that you were identified as not a citizen to begin with? I mean, you have an interesting story. Can you tell me where you were born and how you came to be adopted?
Oh, okay. I was born here in Malaysia, Selangor. So basically, I was adopted by my I was adopted by my adoptive parent. So basically, my adoptive parent was living with my real parents. What I told by my adoptive parents. So basically, from there, my adoptive parents told me that my real parent had to go to their hometown, which is, I think, Philippines. I don't know. So from there, I was taken care by my adoptive parent till I 12 years old until now. She died in 2014. So basically, I don't. My documentation. Firstly, it was from my documentation, which I don't have my real parents. And then I was adopted by my adoptive parent, which is a Malaysian citizenship. And then I think because of the unknown reason, I think mostly because of the parents detail that I don't have, they assume to be no, not citizenship of nation.
So, if I understood you correctly, your biological mother was a migrant worker from the Philippines, and that she was returning to the Philippines, and your adoptive parents adopted you, and that there was an informal adoption that took place, and that they raised you, but that you don't know who your biological parents are, and you don't know exactly where they're from. But you've been adopted by Malaysian citizens. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I think you had told me in the past that when you first went to the government office, that the government official had flagged you as someone who might not be a citizen, or had said something to you. Can you tell me about that encounter when you went to apply for your identification card, as to why or how they or had some suspicions as to why you didn't have the right documentation?
basically, I feel like a little bit offended about that. I mean, like, like people are directly say to me, like, where are you come from? Like, who your parents, something like that. I was like, okay, I'm from Malaysia. I was born in Malaysia. I have legal documentation for that. And they were reading that and asking me after reading that documentation, it was like, okay, what is going on? So I was like, okay, kind of like that treatment. I uh, get it few times, but no really big matters.
I think you had told me in the past too that the government officials said you didn't look like your mother. Was that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, that you must not be her daughter because you don't look like your mother. And I think that was a comment on your appearance. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-mm.
That
Yeah,
yeah, that you might,
usually that.
but you said this happens to you sometimes that people look at you and say, "Where are you
Mm-hmm.
from?"
Um,
Um, that you don't look like a typical Malaysian. Is that correct?
yeah, I think so. Mostly, I heard that.
Yeah. Um, I'm wondering if you could tell me how many times you did apply for citizenship. So the first time you said you applied, it took 5 years for them to respond, for the government to respond to your application. And were you granted citizenship after that?
No, I basically was denied for that citizenship application. So after that, I went to second application. That time I was 18 or 19, I think. So basically, I was actually rushed because I want to apply for university. So basically, for public university, you need to have legal documentation to apply for the university. So from there, me and my paralegal, Mr. Satya, we went to the media. So like to have um, a little bit help from the public.
So your first application, which you waited for 5 years, was denied. Did the government give you any reason why they denied your application?
No, really. They just said that it was denied. No exact reason for that. So we just apply for the second one.
Okay. And um, the second citizenship application, were you granted citizenship then? And how long did you wait for them to process it?
For the second one, I think 1 year after that, then I got right away my identity card. So yeah, one year.
So 1 year. And this one was granted or was not granted?
Yeah, I was granted for that.
Okay. Was this the application that was done at the offices in um, Putrajaya?
Yeah, when I was with you that time with
Okay.
my yeah
So you only
at that
applied
time.
twice. You only applied twice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it took you two applications and the entire processing time from beginning to end. 2 years for the birth certificate, 5 years for the first citizenship application, plus 1 year for the second application.
Yes.
So that took 8 years for you to
Yeah.
resolve your status. And in between, I understand that Mr. Satya connected you with a lawyer as well. You had a lawyer and a paralegal, and you took your case to the media. Why did you think it would be useful or helpful? Why did your lawyers think it was useful for you to go to the media? And were you at all scared about sharing your story publicly?
At first, I was really scared and worried because basically no any my friends know about this. The one who knows is just the one who close, my family and my teachers, and also Mr. Satya. So I was really worried about that at first, and then but I thought about it deeply about my future and what I want to do. So I agree with my lawyer and Mr. Satya to go to the media. It was actually to arise public concern and public awareness about this issue. Basically, there's a lot of statelessness in Malaysia going on. So basically, it's like also is like a eye opener for this issue.
I also remember in March 2018, I accompanied you and your lawyers to a day-long excursion to try to advocate directly with the Home Minister to grant your citizenship application. I remember it was a very long day trip. We drove from Kuala Lumpur to the administrative city of Putrajaya, where all of the administrative arm of the government sat. And I remember that staff of the Home Minister had contacted you and said that they wanted to take a photograph with you and that they would pledge publicly to give you citizenship, but that your lawyer advised you not to do this. Can you tell me why? And can you tell me what occurred during that day? I know what happened, but I would love to hear from your point of view.
It was really hectic actually. It was like we have another business. Actually had a business in Home Ministry, but then someone from officer from Home Ministry contacted me to go somewhere else. I went to there is actually to get discussed to know what reason why my application was denied, that kind of matters. But then they said this kind of business like taking photo, then I will granted you with the citizenship. It was like it wasn't even in the office, like official places to do. So I was like, I decided to not to go after advices by my lawyer. So yeah, it was actually really hectic actually that day. It was like there's two people talking to my both ears. It was like I was like really confused at that time.
It was a very confusing day. I think from my point of view, I saw a lot of communication happening between you and your lawyers and staff from the Home Minister trying to get you to another location to do a photo op, and that they would promise after the photo op to give you citizenship, but that your lawyers advised you that there was no guarantee after the photo op that they would, and that there was a past incident where the Home Minister had taken photos with stateless persons and did not give them citizenship. And so I think I remember your lawyer saying, you have the upper hand and don't give it away by taking a photograph with the Home Minister. And I remember distinctly that someone had said, ask him if he has the identification card in his hand, your citizenship in his hand. And we will only go if he will give it to you when you take the photo.
Yeah.
I remember
that too. It was like
keep going. Yeah, you remember that too?
Yeah. Yeah, it was like really funny as well. It was like, oh my god, what like it's really hectic. Someone is like trying to get my attention, and then like and
it was a bit of a roller coaster that day. We were traveling from early morning till I would say early evening, and back and forth to try to negotiate a meeting with the Home Minister, and the Home Minister trying to get you to do a photo with him. And I wanted to know how you felt. At some points during the day, I observed you felt hopeful, and other times you felt quite sad. Can you tell me what you felt during that day?
Yeah, I was really upset at the end of the day after, we wait for the Home Minister to, to go to Putrajaya where we waited there. So basically, it was a little bit disappointed that the case is not really, completely solved. On our side, it was like, like don't really have the final decision whether I get the citizenship or not. So I was a little bit upset and feeling down after that. But then my lawyers and Mr. Satya told me not to give up. They're really supportive and encourage me that this is not the end of the world. It's just the beginning. So yeah.
Yeah, and I wondered if you could tell me how this came to be. I mean, your lawyer and your paralegal helped you with your applications. They advised you on the steps you needed to take to apply for citizenship. But why did they decide to go directly to the Home Minister? Did they tell you what the strategy was, or why it was important for you to not only speak to the media, but try to advocate directly to the Home Minister? Can you speak about that?
I'm not really sure, but then I think mostly because of the Home Minister at that time was 100% responsible for every citizenship application in Malaysia. So I think my lawyer tried to bring these matters directly to the one who responsible for these matters. So yeah, I think that's why they went there.
Mm-hmm. And I remember during that day, the staff of the Home Minister told you to do an application that day and that they had promised to process it that day. I remember all of us running around with you to fill out applications and forms. Do you remember that? Can you tell me what it felt like to fill out an additional application like that?
Yeah, it was like back to square one, which is the many form that I need to fill up. But that time I was a little bit in ease, which is easier because I have my lawyer and Mr. Satya to help me with that kind of form. So it was actually really hectic because I need to do for the citizenship application, and then need to go back to Home Ministry to wait for the final decision for the citizenship.
Yeah, so in the end, you were able to submit a new application and that the Home Minister was aware of it. Were you given the impression that you would have gotten a response that day?
Um, I don't know. I think I don't really like really expecting to get it right away, but as this issue like a little bit more concerning at that time, I was thought that you know this matter can be solved right away because we are contacting directly to the Home Minister. So yeah, the reaction from the Home Minister at that time was like not what I was expecting actually.
Mm-hmm. I remember that this occurred when you were around 20 years old. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that there was an urgency. Your birthday was in April.
Yeah.
And that you would become an adult in Malaysian
Yeah.
law in April. And we were at the Home Ministry in March. Why, can you explain why it was really important and why your lawyers felt it was important to expedite your case or to have some certainty with regards to your citizenship application before your 21st birthday? Why?
Because of after you reach 21 years old, then it's really difficult to apply and to get citizenship after you has reached a legal age. So that's why they really rush to get me the citizenship and also apply it before I reach 21 years old.
Yeah, I think I understand that the Federal Constitution of Malaysia has a provision that
Mm-hmm.
gives the Home Minister discretion to grant citizenship to any child that is stateless before the age of 21. And so your lawyers
Yeah.
felt this was very important that you
Mm-hmm.
still qualify for that opportunity before you turn age 21. How old were you when you were eventually granted citizenship?
21 years old.
And when did you get your citizenship?
I think a year after that, on July 2018, I yeah.
July
No,
2019?
yeah, 19,
Yeah.
2019. Yeah.
So can you tell me how that happened? Um, were you surprised? What do you think changed that allowed them to grant your citizenship application?
I think mostly because of the maybe because of the application. I think I had it really long to with the application, and then I think mostly they look up to my education level, what future that I hold. So I think they consider it that kind of point.
Yeah, I noticed that the media, there were a lot of media stories on you and your case in Malaysia, and you've publicly identified as a hijab wearing Muslim who speaks Malay and is a straight A student, and that you have not been able to go to university because you have been stateless. Do you think all of these things helped you in obtaining citizenship? The fact that you are Malay in your heart, in the way that you present yourself, and that you are a promising student that wanted to go to university. Do you think all of these things helped you in your application?
Yeah, I think it actually play a major part of it. I think because of that, they maybe they see something in me that like something in future. Um, and also that here we were speaking in Malay, so they are really look up at that of character. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell me what you did when you found out you were granted citizenship? What did you do that day? How did you celebrate?
I was uh, at university at that time. I think I'm having classes, and then Mrs. Satya called me that I got already my citizenship. So basically, the next day we prepared to go to Home Ministry to get the letters, and then right away apply for the IC.
That's wonderful. And what I remember when I asked you, when we were at Putrajaya during that day, that hectic day you described, trying to meet the Home Minister, I asked you, what would you do if you got citizenship? Do you remember what you said to me?
Maybe I said that I want to have my own bank account, and then I would like to have my um what is it car license. I think that the most thing I want to do.
Yeah, I remember you said you would jump up and down. You would be really happy that you would enroll in university and get your
Yeah.
IC and your driver's license. um, I'm assuming you've done all that now. How does it feel
Yeah.
to be a citizen?
It was really I was really happy. I am happy. I'm very grateful with this. Now I'm a citizenship of Malaysian. Things have been easier for me. I can like I can move around freely. I don't have to worry about those matters in terms of documentation whatsoever. Like whatever I want to do, I can just go for it. So that kind of thing that is not limits me to do something. It was like really, it's like a freedom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can imagine. Um, Royce, I think, you were so young when this happened, and throughout this whole process, you've been so brave. I've noticed how poised you are when you're talking to the media. I didn't know this until you mentioned it now, but you said that nobody knew you were stateless until you went public. How did people react when you came out publicly with your story? I think it's incredibly brave that you took that risk to come out with your story. So, how did people react, and did people treat you differently after that?
Basically, they just treat me the same like before. They actually really shocked when they told me that like this kind of issue. They said that they really want to know that I can share with them. So I was really grateful for that. They're really supportive. They are giving me, more um, motivation, positive words to go with the day, like after the long day. So, yeah, I was actually really worried about their reaction at first. So I never thought about I went to the media. So basically, they found out by themselves when they wrote the news.
Yeah, no, I think you are a very resilient person, and it shows that you are able to perform so well at school despite the challenges you faced. What are you studying now that you are in university?
I'm doing third years in accounting course in Tun Abdul Razak University in Kuala Lumpur. So yeah, I'm doing accounting course
That
right
sounds
now.
wonderful. Um, and it's so wonderful to hear that you've been able to realize your dream of going to university. Um, can you tell me just one final question? Just why do you think this happened? You mentioned that there are a lot of cases of statelessness in Malaysia. Why do you think this is happening in Malaysia? And what's your understanding of how this could have happened to you?
um, I think mostly because of the process. It was really complicated and long way to go. It's really needs like better understanding to do these issues, especially those parents who has stateless kids. So from what I understand is that I think because of the application itself is really complicated. It's not easy to get it. As I concern, there's a lot of application for citizenship in Malaysia. So I think that actually maybe the factor why the process itself is really long and difficult to get it. Um, However, I think mostly because of the awareness about this issue that people don't have, and then especially for those parents who don't really have knowledge in law and what kind of process they need to go in right way so they can get the citizenship. I think that kind of challenges really play a important role for that.
Yeah, it sounded very complicated. I'm just marveling that you were 21 when you became a citizen, you were 12 when you found out you were stateless. So it took almost 10 years for you to
Yeah.
rectify that situation. And considering the fact that you were born in Malaysia and that you have Malaysian
Mhm.
parents, um, well, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your story. It is um, great that it ended in a happy way and that you're doing so well. But I just want to, thank you for being brave again by sharing something that most people would find very difficult to talk about. So I thank you.
I feel like this is like a long time ago, not really long time ago. It was like something that I really cherish. Uh, it was like a story to be told twice. So I was like, okay, I'm very excited actually for this session with you. to share my stories with others to have better understanding what we are feeling. So I'm really grateful that someone like you are doing these issues to have, like better awareness for the public, and you are responsible for this. Thank you so much for having me today. It was really great to have you again.
You too. It's so nice to see you doing well.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Migration Conversations is created and hosted by me, Professor Jamie Liu, and produced by University of Ottawa Tech Law Fellow June Gleed. This podcast was made possible with the guidance and assistance of University of Ottawa Tech Law Fellow Ritesh Kotak, Carleton University graduate student Rachel McNally, as well as the generous support of Carleton University and the University of Ottawa shared online projects and initiatives. You can find more Migration Conversations episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and YouTube with closed captions. Thank you for listening, and a special thank you for all the guests who have shared their experiences publicly.